passage of time, we have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
This meeting of the Starkville Board of Alderman will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Do we have any proposed revisions to the agenda as written?
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
It's my first opportunity to look through it, but just bear with me. Under Mayor's Business, I'm just going to go page by page. Mayor's Business number, Roman numeral 9A. I want that off the consent agenda, please, sir.
All right, please make note that on page 2, 9A has been removed from consent.
Okay, as I flip on through here, I got a few more things, hold on. I want items under elected department E1 and F1. I want some explanation on where we are, what's going on, why we need to approve a rate change for TVA, like they should have enough federal authority. Let me get some explanation on E1, elected department F1.
Okay, on page 4, please make note that items E1 and F1 previously on consent have been removed. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do, sir. On personnel number 5, I want items 1 and 2 off. Let me hear what's about the job description. I want the officers come out here and explain all that. Items 1 and 2 on the personnel come off.
Please make note on page 5. Items I-1 and I-2 have been removed from the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, and I'll agree to put items 4 and 5 on the consent agenda on the personnel. Items 4 and 5 on the consent.
Okay, the proposed revision, let's take those one at a time, is to place first item I-4 on page 5 on the consent agenda. Request for authorization to hire Glenn Hayes and Daryl Jordan as drivers and Theodis Weaver and Stephen Lane as laborers in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department. Proposed revision is to place that on the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note that item I-4 on page 5 has been placed on consent. And Alderman Perkins, your next proposed revision was to place item I-5 on page 5, which is the request for approval of promotions in the fire department on the consent agenda. Is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection? Any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please make note that that matter has been placed on the consent agenda as well. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any further? Alderman Carver.
Yes, sir. First of all, on the mayor's business number B, I'd like to place that consent if we put in a dollar amount with it. Has it been a...
Yes. It needs to be $60 if we're going to stick with the sponsorship level from last year.
Okay.
That's a half page.
Mr. Mayor, just for your information, I see there's an account number. You may want to, since you're going to put that on the consent, you may want to include that account number with it. I think they put that for a reason. Ms. Brewer put an account number on there. You probably want to go ahead and put the dollar amount and the account number.
All right, the proposed revision, well, is it a proposed revision? Alderman Carver, do you want to make that $60?
Yes, sir. With the account number 001-094-697.
All right, the proposed revision is to keep item 9B on page 2 on the consent agenda, the consideration of the approval of an advertisement in the NAACP Freedom Award Banquet Program in accordance with authorization by Mississippi Code 1731 and to add to that item, still on consent, in the amount of $60 coming from account referenced in the packet. Alderman Carver, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir. Second revision under.
Hold on
board
one
bus-
second. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter has been modified and remains on the consent agenda. Alderman Carver?
And then under board business, item B, this is the actual consideration of amending the sidewalk ordinance due to the city attorney having some things he'd like to discuss, and also Alderman Dumas not being here to be in the liaison with the sidewalk committee. We're going to just remove that from the agenda completely tonight.
The proposed revision is to remove item 10B, consideration of amending the City of Starkville Sidewalk Ordinance 2009-07 from the agenda. Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please make note that that item has been stricken from the agenda. Do we have any further proposed revisions? Alderman Carver.
Also, under board business, D, consideration of the approval for request of in-kind services for the Heritage Museum. Add that to consent agenda.
All right, the proposed revision is to add item 10D on page 3, consideration of the approval of the request for in-kind services to the Heritage Museum in the amount of $1,885.51 to the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please make note that that matter has been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Carver, do you have further proposed revisions?
I've got one more question. Under board business F, the consideration of a resolution to rename Highway 82 within the city limits of the city of Starkville as the Jack Crystal Highway. Should we do any kind of not to exceed amount on signage, or would there be signage to be included with that, or is that forthcoming? Or?
This will actually, my understanding of it is be a state program. I got a call last week from Mike Taggart, who is a local resident and also a member of the Transportation Commission, and he noted that they had been getting many requests to name a stretch of road in Starkville after Jack Crystal, and noted that while this will involve a legislative process, a Mississippi legislative process, it is helpful for the city to make a statement of support, and it's to that end that resolution's in the package.
Okay. No more.
Okay.
May I?
Alderman Sistro.
Let's see, under Mayor's Business, item C on page 3, I just need to correct an account number. Our packet indicates that that would come from the contingency fund, and it was actually budgeted and should be coming from account number 001-023-601.
And that was which item?
Mayor's Business, item C, 9C on page 3.
Okay, so the proposed revision is to keep item 9C, which appears on page 3, on the consent agenda. That item is the consideration of the approval of the participation with the Starkville Main Street Association in the Main Street Charrette program in the amount of $5,100, and add to that that is to come from, make sure I get this number right, line item, budget line item 001-023-601.
I think that's right, yes.
All right. Is there any objection to that proposed revision? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change to that item, which will remain on the consent agenda. Further proposed revision. Alderman Parker.
Under board business, item E, the resolution to oppose the reapportionment plan. I'd like to just read that as, it's just a brief document. I'd like to take that off consent and read that.
All right. Item 10E on page 3, the consideration of a resolution to oppose the reapportionment plan has been removed from the consent agenda. Further proposed revision.
And is item C on consent?
Item C does remain on the consent agenda. Are there further proposed revisions? Alderman Corey.
Since we've gone ahead and put the Heritage Museum issue on the consent agenda, is there any need to have the public appearance then under item B, section 7?
I notice we do have representatives here. Is there anything y'all would like to say? Okay.
So I'd like that removed.
All right, Alderman Corey has made a proposed revision to remove item 7B, a presentation by Joan Wilson representing the Heritage Museum from the agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. Item 7B has been removed from the agenda.
One other, the tech committee, in addition to city staff, had an opportunity to interview the candidates for the second IT position, and we had a recommendation as listed under section 3 in personnel. Unless there's any objections, I'd like to add that to consent.
All right, the proposed revision is to place item I3 on page 5. That is the request for approval to hire Byron Palmertree to fill the position of Systems Network Administrator in the IT Department to the consent agenda. Is there any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. That item has been added to the consent agenda. So we now have officially, under personnel, taken everything off of the consent agenda that was originally on and placed everything on that was originally on. Further proposed revision.
One more.
Alderman Vaughn.
Page 3, item C, on the mayor's business, remove that from the consent agenda.
All right. Item 9C, the consideration of approving participation with the Starkville Main Street Association in the amount of $5,100 has been removed from the consent agenda. Further proposed revision. Do we have any further proposed revisions to the agenda? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised would be in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Corey to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Parker. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes, and the agenda has been approved. The first item for your consideration on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda as revised. Is there any objection to the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. And that will carry us to the request for consideration of the approval of the minutes from the February 15, 2011 meeting. Discussion. Alderman Parker.
There were some items under between 7 and 8. Approval to accept the financials, and then also there was just some wording that needed to be corrected in between items 7 and 8.
Do you have that
It's
either in
actually
a form you can state or
it's
a
a whole
form that's written?
paragraph. It's a whole paragraph that has to. It just kind of got item 7 got transposed to item 8 as well. Copied. So that needs to be corrected to.
All right, let's go through it so
Okay.
we're sure we know what we're doing. All right, this is item 7.
Well, we could just concentrate on item 8.
Okay, item 8, authorization for the purchase of 2 extended cab 2-wheel pickup trucks. Is that the correct item?
It is.
What needs to be done with it?
The whole paragraph.
In the wording, the approval of the acceptance, it's got the approval of the acceptance of the January financials, which was item 7 under 8.
Okay.
So it was on the consent agenda, but where that apostrophe or
So do we have the correct language for this one? So the title needs to appear. Okay, so where it does say the approval of the acceptance of the January 2011 financials for the city of Starkville as presented, it should say approval of the purchase of 2 extended cab 2-wheel pickup trucks from state contract at a cost of $13,687 per truck, state contract number 0791211570. Is that correct?
correct.
All right. Now, you're going to have additional proposed amendments to the minutes? If you are, let's go one by one.
I just have one more. I was absent when we voted for the consent agenda, so I'm marked down as a yay where I should be absent.
All right. Do you have the specific votes?
It's on all the consent items. That's under item
Okay.
1.
So your proposed amendment, and we don't have a motion yet, assuming you might want to make a motion to amend, or to adopt as amended, or with stated amendments, would be to replace the language that I just read, erroneously placed in item number 8, with the language from the title that I read, and also to remove you as a yea vote from all consent agenda items because you were not present for the adoption of the consent agenda.
Correct.
All right. Do you wish to make a motion?
I do. So moved.
All right. Alderman Parker has made a motion to approve the minutes from the February 15th meeting with the changes as stated. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. And that will take us to announcements and comments from the mayors and the board. And I have no announcements or comments tonight. Are there any comments or announcements from the members of the board? Any comments or announcements from the members of the board? Alderman
What I'll
Parker.
say is, being spring break, we got the opportunity last night to go to the Sportsplex and just notice the fine job y'all are doing. And while you're both here tonight, just congratulate you and Mr. Moreland and the overload of crowd you're having and the job that you're doing. So it gives the kids a chance to something to do yesterday with the rain and the weather the way it is. They can get in there and play basketball. And I know y'all are having phenomenal numbers this week, so keep it up.
Any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments? Any further comments? Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll now move to citizen comments. Any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. We want to say good evening to the vice mayor, Sis
Mr.
and
Turner?
Alderman Vaughn. Good evening, Alvin. The citizens have just a few things that is troublesome to them. Our citizens is very upset that when it comes to the sanitation department, Alderman Parker has a problem with everything that's brought with sanitation department. That is very disturbing to the citizens. The citizens, we would like to know, since we are hiring so much, how many police officers do we have? How many fire department employees do we have? How many public works and how many sanitation? We would like to know, what do we have to work with? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments tonight? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to public appearances. And we now have 2 public appearances scheduled tonight. The first is from Broadcast Media on its promotional efforts in conjunction with the recycling program. And for all of our public presentations tonight, you will have a maximum of 10 minutes to use as you so choose.
I'm going to try to do it in 5. Alderman Parker, you want to bring anything up prior to?
This is as part of our as part of the grant we received for our recycling program. Almost half of that grant, half of the $50,000 of that grant is to be used for advertising and promotion. So we contacted Robbie to see if he could put together us a program that would allow us to effectively promote our recycling program. He made a presentation before the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee 2 weeks ago. All members of the committee were very excited about what he had to offer, and we felt it was important to bring him before the board to kind of let him make that presentation to the board. So when we move forward with this promotion, that the board knows where this money's coming from and what it's being used for. So.
Mr. Cope?
All right, a few weeks ago, Sharon Boyd and I talked about putting together a comprehensive marketing proposal for the recycling program. It's broken down into essentially a TV component and a brochure component. Sharon had some great ideas, brought us in, and so we came back with this proposal. The entire budget for it is a total of $22,496, and that's coming out of the grant that Alderman Parker discussed. Basically what it entails is 4 television commercials, a brochure, 10,000 copies of the brochure, and then a very aggressive ad campaign on MetroCast from now to the end of December. It's targeting our base groups of elderly, minority, college students, those who are not utilizing recycling to its fullest extent. You have the airtime schedule in your packet. I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. Just to kind of give you an idea of some of the commercials that we have done, we've done a lot of stuff for Peppers, Harvey's, we've done some regional and national things, so we want to bring that type of quality to a campaign like this. Haley Montgomery, who's sitting on the second row here, is the creative designer for this project. She is with Small Pond Graphics. Haley, there she is. Haley's done a lot of local design work. She was formerly creative director of Ducks Deluxe. And Cindy McNair with Comcast Spotlight Advertising is here with me as well. She's on the second row. So you've got the process overview of producing creative for the TV spots. Create 4 spots, get them on air as quickly as possible so that we can hit the students before they leave. Concurrent with that, there's a brochure design that will go into place. And then 10,000 copies of the brochure will be printed up. One aside, in this community, we often go outside of the area for consultants. One of the things that I want to point out to you is this entire media plan is being executed by local Starkville businesses. You have 3 small businesses here in Starkville, Broadcast Media, Small Pond Graphics, and Watermark Printing, who will do the majority of this work. So it's nice to see that the board and the department will be utilizing local expertise. I think that's under 5 minutes. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cope? Alderman Carter.
I've
Yes,
got
sir.
one with the brochures. That's a pretty good price, and for that price, is the distribution plan to be put through the Starkville Electric Department bills, or how would y'all distribute those brochures?
I'll refer that to Ms. Boyd.
No, they will go all over like Sportsplex, Starkville Electric, library, city hall, certain areas where citizens would come into and see the brochures, especially with the Starkville Electric Department, where they're just people coming into town. Partnership, areas of that nature.
Well, I was just thinking maybe for a target aspect to send them out just like we do with animal control.
And we've talked about doing, this is a trifold brochure, that's a full color trifold, that'll be more of a handout brochure.
Okay.
If we did do a mail out, we would do more of a bulleted point. I mean, everybody thought that the trifold, putting the trifold in the Starkville Electric mail out we would lose a lot of our impact, because people aren't really, you don't get full utilization in a mail out like that.
Okay.
Where if we have it available everywhere, electric department, Sportsplex, just all around town where people are, then we'll get much better the promotion from that. So.
Are there any further questions or comments from members of the board? Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? Oh, Ms. Boyd.
Yes, I also want to let you know, Haley will be coming back out there for next board meeting with a logo for the sanitation and environmental services. Hoping you all will be as excited as we are.
Yeah, outside of this proposal, we're discussing with Ms. Boyd about a logo design, which Haley has already talked to her about, and a website as well.
The
So.
website with Twitter, Facebook.
similar to what we did for Parks and Rec, which is being utilized now. So, and Ms. Boyd's been great. She's given us a lot of ideas. She's been real aggressive with this approach, so she's to be commended.
Excellent. You're all doing an excellent job. Thank you, Mr. Copeland.
Thank you.
Our next public appearance is by Dan Moreland and Matthew Rye from the Parks Commission for the quarterly report.
Well, we don't have a lot to report on today. Mr. Scribner was supposed to be here and go over the audit, but since he did the Watkin Wards and Stafford did the one for the city, then he requested to wait and go over it at the same time that he goes over the city budget. I mean, the financial statement on it. We've working into the busy time of the year, starting with our walking deal is down some because of the weather, which a lot of people are outside. We're up down to probably 250 average a day walking. The storm hit pretty hard down there. We had, as you know, $25,000 deductible, but by utilizing our people and trying to get Matthew up and come down there every once in a while and look around, we were able to put everything back and all without costing us any money, even with the deductible. So that's with utilizing some of our people, and then we outsourced some of it. We're in the process now of looking into a splash pad for the little kids. Matthew's had a couple of meetings with the people. They're not cheap, but I think they would be very well utilized. We're also in the process of the inline skating to resurface the courts on it. That should be done this summer. It was within our budget. And you all have a packet with the numbers of the programs that we have and also the financial statement of expenditures on it. Matthew, you got anything?
Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the members of the board?
What kind of figures are you talking about for a spray ground? How much?
Yeah, that's a $1 million question. It depends on the size, depends on if you're gonna use recirculation. You're looking at a minimum of probably $100,000. It could go up to $400,000. So that's kind of what we're in. We're in the gathering information stage now.
They are individual units. You can put in as many as 1 to 100 if you want to, a little different ideals and all on it. So, you know, we got to try to live within our budget.
If you had to do that, would you have to budget for I know you don't need a lifeguard, but do you have to have somebody out there watching them? Or
No.
Were you planning on putting that at the Sportsplex, or?
Location hadn't been set. I mean, there's Moncrief Park has been discussed, J.L. King Park has been discussed. We're still kind of gathering information, seeing where we are.
Again, we talked about that before. We at a conference some of us met with individuals, but I know I have a young child, but no threat of drowning or anything like that. And the ones I've seen on the river, just in the summer, they get heavily utilized because I guess there's not the threat of a child having to could drown them, but you know people use those. If you can get one, that'd be good.
Yeah.
No, they're not required through the state anything to have a lifeguard because it's just kind of like sprinkling with a water hose with different configurations of turtles and different type things.
Further questions or comments? Alderman Vaughn.
I just commend them on the job they're doing down there. They're doing a real good job keeping the kids off the street. Doing a real good job.
Any further? Alderman Parker.
I'd like to commend the commission and Matthew. They, in their audit, there were no significant findings of error or omission or anything. There were no findings, anything out of order. So that was very commendable that, this is the first year Watkins Ward Stafford has done that audit, and for them to find nothing in the first year is great record keeping.
Well, when we hired them, we sewed up his pockets, so I mean, it worked out real good. We thank y'all.
Excellent job. Thank you.
Matt, you go watch the ball game,
And that will take us to public hearings. We have two public hearings scheduled tonight. The first is the second public hearing on the amending of the Starkville Sidewalk Ordinance 2009-07 and the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Article 3. To recap, I guess what transpired in the revisions and give you a little background on that. This item would normally be eligible for adoption tonight because this is the second public hearing and that's what our policy mandates. However, since the last public hearing was held on this matter, conversations with the Transportation Committee and the City Attorney have yielded some language changes and some omissions from the initial proposed amendment. And the city attorney feels that those changes are substantive enough to warrant a third public hearing prior to this matter being eligible for adoption. So we'll have a second public hearing tonight, and then if the board so chooses, we'll have a third public hearing at the April meeting, and the matter will be eligible for adoption at that point.
I'd like to go over those changes that were made based on the recommendations of the city attorney. The Transportation Committee has the following changes. If you have a copy of the proposed ordinance, on page 3 of 9 under section 3.2, this is just a clarification about existing single-family houses in vacant lots in neighborhoods where there are no sidewalks or were no sidewalks at the time the ordinance was enacted. And the last sentence was struck and reworded as builders putting up new houses or improving residential structures on existing lots and existing subdivisions with public streets which were accepted by the city prior to the sidewalk ordinance shall not be required to install sidewalks. Again, just trying to clarify something that's been there all along. And then there had been language added on page 5, sections 4.8 and 4.9 that dealt with historical sites, endangered species, trees, those sorts of things. And the language was not clear, and it was not going to be something that could be changed in time to have a public hearing on it. So those sections were struck with the idea that we can come back and amend that at some point later in time.
Do we have a representative from the Transportation Committee that would like to provide any introductory comments before we move into the public comment portion of the public hearing?
I would just, I'm Chris Gottbroth. I'm, I guess, provisionally on the Transportation Committee. Was last year and have been continuing to help out. And I'm up for reappointment as well. Just wanted to say thank everybody on the board for your patience as we go through the process. It's you know, and the back and forth with Mr. Latimer on the subject, and answer any questions you guys have. But I think Sam did a good job covering it.
Are there any questions from the members of the board for Mr. Gottfried? Any questions from the members of the board? Any questions from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move into the public comment portion of the public hearing. And we will handle this as is standard practice, hearing alternating comments from those for and against the proposed amendment. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and each side collectively, those for and those against, will have a maximum of 15 minutes. We will conduct the public hearing either until no one wishes to speak on the subject or until each side has exhausted its maximum of 15 minutes.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Amen. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment?
Good evening, man and woman. My name is Adam, Ward 7. People in Ward 7 ask myself, we are getting very frightened. We go over and over and over and over. And we just are spinning our wheels, getting nowhere. So a lot of us in Ward 7, we would just like to, if we get broke up or hurt of anything, we would just like to know of any disability lawyers that we can find. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment? Is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak on the proposed amendment? Anyone wishing to speak? All right, seeing no one, that will conclude our second public hearing on the amendment to the sidewalk ordinance. And without objection from the members of the board, we will set a third public hearing for the first meeting in April. Is there any objection from the members of the board? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, we'll have that third public hearing at the first meeting in April. Our next public hearing is the first public hearing on amending the Starkville sign ordinance 2008-10 and the City of Starkville Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Section C. And a brief summary of some of the notable changes in this proposed amendment. Proposed amendment would establish a process for off-site directional signs and also a 10-year amortization period so that non-conforming signs could be brought into conformity with the existing sign ordinance. Are there any members of the board wishing to make introductory comments? Any members of the board wishing to make introductory comments? Alderman Carver.
Who on the board introduced this matter?
I don't know that it does have a sponsor from the board.
Mr. Mayor, I may be recognized.
You may.
Good question, Mr. Brewer. How did this get on the agenda? I mean, somebody have to put it on the agenda. I think you should know. Tell us.
Well, from the last meeting, it was put on for the first public hearing. This time, sort of a group of aldermen. The mayor has a memo out that talks about the sign ordinance, and I believe we had a number of aldermen that were interested in moving forward.
If we need a sponsor, I will be the sponsor. So.
I didn't know a single person to attribute it to, but we had a number of aldermen who were interested in moving it forward.
Ms. Brewer, appreciate your response, but, and of course, you're great to work with, but in the future, just give me more of a direct answer. I mean, I want to know.
In that case, I don't know, alderman.
Okay.
Specific individual alderman.
But in the future, if you ever know the name of a person who put something on the agenda, if we ask the question, we want to know the answer, if you know.
Yes.
Okay? Thank you. Yield, Ms. Mayor.
Are there any further introductory comments from the members of the board? Any further introductory comments? Any further introductory comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion of the public hearing, and we will carry out this public comment portion in the exact same manner that we carried out the previous portion. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak against the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak for, against, or indifferent to the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak on the sign ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak on the sign ordinance? Seeing no one, that will conclude our first public hearing on the amendment to the City of Starkville sign ordinance. And that will carry us to mayor's business. The first matter for your consideration is the approval of advertising for an RFP for the development of a capital improvement plan for the City of Starkville. You'll recall at the retreat we held in February, we discussed this matter, which is on our strategic plan, and I noted that a possible next step is to issue an RFP to see what a consultant might propose to aid the city in developing a capital improvement plan. A draft of such an RFP is in your packet, and I am asking for your approval of that draft so we can see what the market might offer us in terms of a consultant that would develop a capital improvement plan for the city. Discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
A year ago when we first had that meeting on this, what's wrong with the capital improvement plan that we decided on a couple of years ago? What's wrong with it? I see some changes in it over in here about park and recreation, electric, fleet management, water, waterway, stormwater, other general topics. Then it went on down to transportation improvement, streets and road project, focus, Highway 82 realization, expansion, South Montgomery Street, transportation, street roads, and we keep going around the issue. The issue down on Carver Drive, the issue down on, you don't want to hear this one. It's on North Side. We keep going, but I see it's not included in this, and we keep bringing we taking taxpayer money. I say it over and over. We go everywhere. We do everything with it, but they taxpayer too. Why it is not included in this plan? I don't understand that. But it was on the previous plan. But this one is not in there. What's wrong with that?
What document?
I'm looking at what you got here. You made some modification to it, and then you left some out. I mean, it looked like we could find a way, and then the 1998 annexation is not in here. You know, we just going away around the world with taxpayer dollars, and we're not taking care of the things that are at hand, things that before us, the things that we need to take care of. We've been battling with this Carver Drive ditch. We've been battling with this North Side ditch. They got more sewage problem than anyone.
Are you looking at the document that's titled RFP for the development of a...
Yes, I am. What you
All right.
got on here? Yes, I am.
Where does it reference specific?
Look over the inside of it. All that what you got in there. Capital improvement plan developed board citywide. Capital improvement plan for include cost developed project by category includes.
Okay.
You don't see that?
I see where you are.
Okay.
This is not meant to be an exclusive statement of projects that are out there. Those are provided as examples of things. And let me give you an idea of how I think a consultant would work with it that I think is going to get exactly at issues like you were pointing out. This process should be one where a consultant sits with either board members individually or the board collectively and develops a list of potential capital improvement projects. Now, what we have right now, we have some capital planning documents, but we do not have a comprehensive 10-year capital improvement plan. And the first step in that process is to sit with board members and the city staff to get a brainstorm list of everything under the sun that is a potential capital improvement project for city development. And then after that, put that with budget figures and put us on a plan over 10 years where we determine what realistically is affordable and what's not. None of that was intended as an exclusive statement of what would be considered or what wouldn't. I can tell you if there are things you want listed in that description that aren't in there, we can add them.
Well, we keep coming from with all this money to, how all these high dollar positions that we're hiring. Well, we keep coming from with all this money, and we don't have money to take care of the things that we need. And we keep on talking about the ending balance fund. I hate to see the ending balance fund at the end of this year. We talking about how bad it looked last year. I hate to see it coming up this year with all these high dollar positions that we hired and the things that we're doing. We look like we're leaving the taxpayers out. We're not leaving the people that pay taxes. We're not considered about what their needs are. And we just seem like we just consider about what this board wants. That seems like what it seemed to me with this. It's just what this board want. It's not what the city do. It's not what the city want and what the taxpayer want. It just seems like what the board want.
And this does nothing but ask for proposals. It doesn't commit any money to anything. It could well be that we would see what the proposals were and decide that it wasn't financially possible. It could well be that the proposals end up being something that appears affordable. I don't know what we'll get on the proposals.
You know nobody gonna do nothing free.
Sure. No. The proposals will, I'm assuming, include a fee. And if the fee is too high for the board, then certainly the board can choose to pass at that point in time. Alderman Corey.
Hearing what Alderman Vaughn is saying, I do think it might be a good idea, though, to list under the project categories perhaps an item such as completion of city services to annexed areas, because that is a very specific thing that we do, I think all agree needs to be done and completed within this term. And so, that said, I would move approval of the RFP with that one addition to the list of project categories.
Alderman Corey has moved approval of the RFP for the development of a capital improvement plan for the city of Starkville, Mississippi, as presented, with the addition of providing a plan for the extension of city services to annexed areas. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, thanks for the recognition. Certainly want to appreciate the gentleman from Ward 4 for improving the existing language in this proposed document that's before us tonight. I was wondering why this matters before us tonight when at the same time we already have a capital improvement plan that has been adopted by the city. That was adopted by the last administration. We have a road plan. I must add on to what the gentleman from 7 just said a few minutes ago. The question becomes money. You know, just like the board during the last budget year talked about setting aside $100,000 for the contingency fee fund, and as we notice, that fund has been basically utilized and eroded with funding pet projects. There's a proposal before the board tonight to fund $5,000 on a charrette program that we need more information on. And the gentleman from 7 mentioned about, you know, some other matters. Of course, the gentleman from 4 added the annexed areas in, which that should have been one of the first things to be added in. I mean, we annexed that area into the city in October of 1998, almost double the size of the city. And I told the board at the last session that we had, you know, when we do these things, let's be fully inclusive of all the city. You know, we shouldn't have to have these strenuous discussions every time we assemble here. You know, that should not be how we should have to operate. Just like when the matter came up with the matter of the drainage issue for Maple Street, I said, fine. No, that's leadership. You know, I've been supporting and asking and begging and pleading and bowing for the Carver Drive ditch. And the matter came up on Maple Street. I said, yeah, we need it. I'm in favor of it. South Montgomery, we need it. I'm in favor of it. And now we get a proposal here tonight, and I hear the mayor's, in all great respect to him, the explanation, well, let's go ahead and list these projects. I mean, that's leadership. That's the way I define leadership. Put them down here. The people on Carver Drive, I want to see that on this proposal. We have the Carver Drive ditch, the Carver Drive sewer problem, because if you know, if we don't include it, it's going to be an all-out battle. It's going to be an all-out war. It was a war last time just to get a 43 vote, just to get 40 feet of an extension on the Carver Drive ditch. But I want to thank the colleagues who supported that. Let's put these things on the project. Then we can have some very healthy discussions. We can move forward. But, but we cannot just be listing some. And the problem that I have with this is that it lists some, like it talks about the transportation, street, and road extension to include Stark Road and Hospital. That's fine. Improvements to the George Bryan Field. We name some of the projects, but we leave others out. And where you put it at other general capital projects, but that's for the board to decide and to determine. We have a list of capital projects that came up last term. The city engineer went at great length and great work at the direction of the last mayor and board. They had him to come up with some listing and some prices, and that's what he did. And the board decided that is on the books already. So that what we need to be focused on, we need to be trying to utilize the plan that is already on the books. Now, yes, this is going to cost some money, and we don't have the money to be doing all these things. And once we get the plan, what do we do then? We already know what it needs to be done. We have enough identified capital improvement projects that we can try to get done within our limited money that we have. For example, here's one listing: general capital facilities, including police facility. We already know we need that. That's what we're working on now to get to the people. We're waiting on the municipal complex committee so we can get that so the people can vote on it and decide whether or not they want to allow for their tax dollars to be used for these things. So hopefully, governing body, and I say this in all great respect, I wouldn't try to demean or slight or talk down or just say anything negative to anybody. That's not my goal here. My goal, I'm sure, hopefully as the rest of you, is to provide for the betterment of the city of Starkville. So hopefully in the future, every time I come here, I don't have to have some discussion of this magnitude to include areas that are left off. And I want to thank the gentleman from Ford. Thank you, Mr. Alderman, from Ford, at least to better this proposal to some extent. So even though these other projects may be left off of here, hopefully I can challenge us to at least include the areas. And even like with the Carver Drive ditch, let's and y'all would really make me glad if you just bring the back. If you're just not going to do but 40 feet, I appreciate that. Let's get that done without having to have a motion in a second. Matters that's been routinely before the board, let's go ahead and get this done. What is in Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7? I don't care. If it needs it, we got the money, let's get it done. If Maple Street is having a problem, I'm going to support. I told the gentleman from 3, I'm going to support South Montgomery. We've been talking about South Montgomery ever since I've been on this board because they do have a problem there. But let's also get things done like the Carver Drive ditch. We're not asking you to spend the whole budget on the Carver Drive. So that's why, and I asked the CAO today, why is this on the agenda? And I just asked her, and of course this wasn't her scheduling, it's just a conversation. So hopefully in the future that we can have better direction with these matters when they hit the agenda. And I like to see these projects identified in a more of a specific way with more specificity, and hopefully there'll be more inclusion with the board members before these matters hit the agenda. And of course I know they don't have to, but I want to see these things done universally. So with that being said, since the gentleman from Ford motion represents, his amendment represents some improvement, I'm going to support that. We need that. And the people in the annex area have been waiting now for some 13 years, and I remember when we brought them in, we mentioned that if it was reasonably, if we could reasonably do it, we would do it within 5 years. That was contained in the annexation resolution. So they need these services very badly, and hopefully we can get this done. And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to support the gentleman's amendment from Ford. Thank you.
And let me offer some clarifying comments. First of all, we do have what could be considered a partial capital improvement plan. We have a plan that includes capital projects related to roads and drainage. That is by no means an exhaustive plan of the city's capital needs. A capital project is one that requires multiple years of financing. Beyond just roads and drainage, the city has many capital expenditures that we take on in numerous departments. Now, the board, going back to January of 2010, put the goal of establishing a 10-year capital improvement plan in its strategic plan that was unanimously adopted. Then in 2011, the board further amended the scope of that and then unanimously affirmed again the need for the city to develop a comprehensive 10-year capital improvement plan. This is nothing but a request for a proposal. This is to hopefully get someone with expertise in capital planning here so we can sit down and have the discussion with the elected body and with department heads about what all of the potential capital improvements that the city might need over the next 10 years are, and then put that with fiscal realities and make policy decisions. The entire point of this is to get at the process of determining how we're going to meet our comprehensive capital needs over the next 10 years. I do apologize if anybody takes anything on this proposal to be an explicit enumeration of a particular project that would be on the capital improvement plan. To the contrary, this proposal exists so we can begin an open dialogue about what all needs to be on such a capital improvement plan. And hopefully with the support of the board, we'll take a step in that direction tonight. Further discussion. Alderman Carver.
As Alderman Perkins was saying, how active is our capital improvement plan now? I mean, does it need to be modified and adjusted, or is it a pretty good?
The city engineer will be bringing the capital budget to the board at the April meeting. Yeah. Of course, the capital plan guides the capital budget. As good as any plan might be, you're going to have to make some annual budgetary decisions that are guided by that plan. So at the April meeting, y'all will consider the projects that the city engineer is working to compile on that plan. But again, I don't want to confuse the terminology too much because those are capital projects. They're part of a capital plan, but it is not a comprehensive capital plan of all of the city's proposed capital expenditures. We have many, many things beyond those road and drainage projects that are potential capital expenditures, and we make capital expenditures and make payments on former capital expenditures as part of each year's budget process. What a capital improvement plan is intended to do is take the city from a policy standpoint out of the one-year life cycle of a budgetary process, because where cities are so different than private sector organizations is we function on an annual budget life where everything starts over every year. And the reality is you have numerous projects that require long-term financing. So by putting everything out there on the table, you're able to make more informed decisions about what you're going to do over a 10-year period. Further discussion? Any further discussion?
Call the question.
All right, any objection? Any objection to moving into a vote? Any objection to moving into a vote? All those in favor of Alderman Corey's motion to approve of the RFP as presented with the amendment to add the extension of services to previously annexed areas, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. All right, this measure clearly carries. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of approving the participation with Starkville Main Street Association in the Main Street Charrette Program in the amount of $5,100. Let me make a couple of comments before I turn this over to a general discussion. That is, this is not an unbudgeted item. And I'm going to let the Budget Committee chair in a moment explain exactly where this item is, but you'll remember in the budgetary process that we discussed a $12,500 appropriation to the Main Street program this year, and that was ultimately approved. And now this is less than $12,500, which was budgeted, but this is what the Main Street program has requested for what will be their biggest program of the year, which is a Main Street charrette that will result in a master plan for downtown Starkville. Alderman Sistrunk, would you like to
I'll be
talk
glad-
about the budgetary side?
I'll be glad to. When, I'm sure most of y'all remember when we went through the budget process last year and we had a listing of new expenditures, rather than just leaving those as generally open-ended items, we tried to identify specific items that we were spending new revenues on. There were three things that fell into purchase services, one of which was this Main Street program, and we did budget $12,500 for that. Again, a budgeted item, something we were anticipating. I'm pleased that it's only $5,100 as opposed to the $12,500 that we budgeted. And the account number that we read into the revisions to the agenda earlier is where that budget currently sits.
Let me make sure I've got the correct one. Was that 001-023-601?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
I move that we approve the participation in the Starkville Main Street Association in the Main Street Charrette program in the amount of $5,100.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to approve of the participation with the Starkville Main Street Association in the Main Street Charrette program in the amount of $5,100 to come from budget line 00, or account line 001-023-601. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, thank you.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. All right, I have by a vote of 4 in favor and 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of making appointments to the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee, the Commission on Disability, and the Transportation Committee. Discussion. Alderman Court.
There was only one candidate listed for each of the positions, so I was going to provide a motion to appoint them to those respective positions unless anybody has anything they'd rather say first.
Well, I felt like during the past two meetings where we've been talking Transportation Committee, and we have an item on the agenda every time from the Transportation Committee, and I think the deadline to apply to the Transportation Committee seems to personally slipped up on me, so I didn't notify anybody that it was time to apply. I would personally like to extend the application process for the Transportation Committee to March the 31st so we can vote on it at our next meeting, beginning of April. It did not. No, it did not.
Do you have a motion? Is your motion to postpone the consideration of Transportation Committee appointments?
Now, it's to leave the nomination process open until March the 31st for the Transportation Committee.
All right, motion has been made by Alderman Parker to leave the nomination process for the Transportation Committee open until
March 31st.
March 31st and take no action on the matter tonight. Alderman Parker, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I do not.
Any discussion? Alderman Sistrunk.
I feel that we're setting a dangerous precedent, and that essentially what we're saying is that we don't like the candidates who applied. This was publicly noticed, properly publicly noticed, and I feel that we need to consider the candidates who took the time to be involved in the process and get their applications in on time.
Further discussion.
And it is honestly meant as no disrespect to those that did apply, none at all. I would just like to see it extended for that period of time.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll now move into a vote on Alderman Parker's motion, which is to postpone the deadline for Transportation Committee nominations to March 31st and take no action on the matter tonight. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a measure of 4 in favor with 2 against, this vote carries. And that will carry us back into discussion on the general matter, which is the making of appointments to Solid Waste and Recycling Committee and the Commission on Disability. Alderman Corey.
Based on the applications received, I would move that we reappoint P.C. McLaurin to the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee and appoint Molly Howard to the Commission on Disability.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to appoint P.C. McLaurin to the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee and to appoint Molly Howard to the Commission on Disability. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of a resolution to oppose the reapportionment plan of the House of Representatives passed by the Mississippi House on March 4th, 2011. Alderman Parker, I believe you had some comments you wanted to make.
I would just like, it's not a long document. I'd like to, as we know, the census, the census is passed, and the House of Representatives and the Senate for the state of Mississippi is in the process of redrawing our lines, and I just wanted to read a resolution that the board has prepared. Is whereas on March the 4th, 2011, the Mississippi House of Representatives passed a joint resolution to reapportion the House of Representatives, which provides in part that the citizens of the city of Starkville will be divided among 4 legislative districts by voting precincts as follows. We will have, and just to paraphrase this, we will, in one precinct alone, the voters in that precinct will be voting for 4 different representatives. One that lives in Calhoun County, one that lives in Grenada, one that lives in Lowndes County, and one that lives in Oktibbeha. So 3 of the 4 that they'll be voting on, currently a majority of their territory is outside Oktibbeha County. And it continues to say, whereas the mayor and board of aldermen of the city of Starkville believe that there is a commonality of interest among the citizens of the city which favors representation of such citizens by representatives of said commonality. And whereas the mayor and the board of aldermen are of the opinion that the reapportionment proposed would effectively dilute the voting strength of the city's population by causing citizens to be drawn into 4 districts stretching from the Alabama state line to Grenada County, Mississippi, with over 200 collective miles separating current representation from the city of Starkville. And whereas the mayor and the board of aldermen recognize that the city of Starkville grew by 9.2% in the previous 10 years to a population of 23,688, equal to the average district population for the state of Mississippi. And whereas the mayor and board of aldermen of the city of Starkville find and determine that the proposed reapportionment has the city represented by legislatures representing 5 additional counties and multiple municipalities, none of which are as large or larger than the city of Starkville. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and the board of aldermen of the city of Starkville that the city of Starkville opposes the joint resolution to reapportion the House of Representatives passed by the Mississippi House of Representatives on March the 4th, 2011. I'd just like to reiterate that we would have 4 representatives for the city of Starkville, actually have 5 representatives for Oktibbeha County overall. So they are effectively diluting any, as the resolution states, they're diluting any voting strength that the city of Starkville or Oktibbeha County may have. So I move consideration of a resolution to oppose the reapportionment plan of the House of Representatives passed by the Mississippi House of Representatives on March 4, 2011.
Alderman Parker has moved to approve a resolution to oppose the reapportionment plan of the House of Representatives passed by the Mississippi House of Representatives on March 4th, 2011 as presented. Alderman Parker, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Parker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
Do not.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Corey.
Yeah, who will receive copies of this once this is adopted? Will this be sent to the Mississippi House?
I would suggest, and I will, unless anybody has any strong objection, to send it to every member of the Mississippi legislature as well as all local and state media outlets.
May I also add the representatives from the Mississippi Municipal League be sent a copy of this as well?
Yep. what I'll do, I'll attach a cover letter and send it. And if y'all think of anybody after tonight, just tell me who you want it sent to. Further discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
I wasn't notified of this here letter, and I guess we saying that the Mississippi House of Representatives don't know what they're doing. But since I was not notified, I would not be able to support this.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a measure of 6 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes.
5 in favor.
Oh, excuse me, by a measure of 5 in favor and 1 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of a resolution to rename Highway 82 within the limits of the city of Starkville, Jack Crystal Highway. And I spoke earlier about the purpose of the resolution. You have, so I will open the floor for discussion. Alderman Sistra.
As someone who's never heard a Mississippi State football game broadcast by anyone other than Jack Crystal, I would, and I might well be the oldest person sitting up here, I move that we approve the resolution to rename Highway 82 within the city limits of the city of Starkville, Jack Crystal Highway.
Vice Mayor, I'll second that, but you want to make
Hold
sure.
on 1 second, let's get the motion. Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to approve a resolution to rename Highway 82 within the city limits of the city of Starkville, Jack Crystal Highway. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Perkins. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the matter?
No. I'll let Mr.
Discussion.
Perkins speak.
Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to make sure that the minutes are clean, just like the resolution is to rename Highway 82 the bypass portion of, just want to make sure that 50 years from now, be clear, the Highway 82, that's what the resolution says, just want the minutes to be real clear. Highway 82 bypass portion. Just want to make sure the minutes clear.
We were discussing that earlier. Does that mean like kind of right out there by Fast Break all the way around
That's
to
why I
the Ford
put it-
dealership?
No, sir, that's why we put on as the bypass. That's the new highway. Right, Ms. Brewer? Right, that's why we make sure that's why the resolution word is so specific and clear. It has to bypass. We just want to make sure the motion has the same language that's in the resolution. And that's
Right. It also has mile markers on there, so you get precise in the resolution.
Yes, sir. Right. So I'm seconding the language that's contained in the resolution.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passed. Let's see. If I can. That will carry us to a request for consideration of the rate change agreement between the city of Starkville and wholesale provider TVA. Mr. Kemp?
Mr. Mayor, let me say one thing real briefly. And Mr. Kemp, I may not be, I'm not just opposed. I just want to hear what's going on with it. And very briefly, I had to spend a lot of time with it.
Okay. This is the next step in a process, I guess it started about in '08, where TVA and distributors began looking at the price of electricity and how rates reflected or captured that cost. I think over the past several years, if you looked at the load curves on how you're building load throughout the valley, a lot of that is what we'd consider building on top of peaks. The last rate change of this magnitude that's been between TVA and the distributors was back in 1992. That was more of what we considered an in-use rate. So it really gave little consideration to the time of the day or difference in the price of electricity throughout the day. The wholesale rate that we're talking about here today would put Starkville Electric on what we'd consider a seasonal time of use rate, which breaks it into 4 different areas. One would be a summer, which would be June, July, August, and September. There would be a transition period, October and November. Then there would be a December period, a winter peak, which would be December, January, February, March, and then you'd go into a transitional period for April and May. During those three, you got a summer, a winter, and a transition. The rates are different. So they more reflect the real cost of electricity back to the customers. Now, one more thing I would say in this one, this rate structure has been set up so that it is a revenue neutral to TVA. And basically, we've spent a lot of time trying to minimize any impact as relates to Starkville Electric, like all the other distributors are doing the same thing. So that's what we're talking about implementing as of now. So we would actually be paying our wholesale bill as a reflection of a season, but also a time of use. And peaks during the summer would be that period of time when we'd consider from 12 o'clock in the morning, at noon, till about 8 at night. And in the winter, we would be looking at peaks from 4 in the morning till about 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's kind of a morning peak. So that's what these rates actually start to reflect.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask?
You may.
Mr. Kemp, I defer to your expertise and knowledge and experience in the field here. Now, they're not asking us to approve any pass-through rate increase. I know you didn't say that, but I just want to get that out. They're not asking us to approve any pass-through rate, are they?
That's correct. And let me make sure I'm correct on what you're asking.
Okay.
Because in our case, what we did was design the rates so that from Starkville Electric standpoint, what our margins, y'all approve the rates, ours does not change.
Okay.
But if you looked at all 158 distributors throughout the valley, there may be a little bit of deviation between distributors because every one of them are different, a little bit different because of the way their curves match up. But it is not intended to raise either TVA's revenue nor significant impact individual distributors' revenue.
So by voting yay for this tonight, we're not saying that we are authorizing any increase in electrical rates per se.
You're not, but there would be a small increase simply because of the way the curves match up. So we're not receiving any, but the way the system works is probably, I guess, our analysis, that's what we've been spending a lot of time to minimize that. We're talking less than about 0.4% possibly, and we're estimating that over a year's period of time.
Last question: is there any way, you work with TVA? I'm not an expert. I don't have any knowledge in this area, but is there any way TVA can do this adjustment without having to get our approval or lack of approval? Because they come to us over the past years wanting to try to get some approval from the board to implement these type things. Is there any way they can do this without any action from us, given all their, I'm sure, wide latitude of federal authority?
They can do this. And the reason I say the process started in 2008, there was a letter of notification in, let me give you the exact date, July of this past year, which kind of said we'd start the process. This is in line with what the power contract between the city and TVA is actually agreed to. And then the TVA board actually took action August of this past year to implement these rates on April the 1st. And so to answer your question, it is within their rights to kind of set rates after a lengthy discussion with the distributors, and that has occurred. And so that's what happens on April the 1st. Now, I will say one other thing. April the 1st is the start date. There is another, we're moving to a time of use rate right now. All distributors will wind up on the time of use rate in October 2012.
So do you anticipate being back with us before us any time this year with any other requests of this magnitude?
No, sir. I hope this would be the last major rate change that I'll bring forth to you at that time. Now, there is consideration, and if one comes forth that would be to our benefit, I would bring it back. But the agreement with TVA is that this would be the rate effect in a place past 2012, and so then we would not have to make a change. And so that's where we are on that, on the wholesale rates.
Right, you know, and the discomfort that I get when we have these proposals, I just want to be real clear to the taxpayers that we're not sitting here, because they may not have the full understanding that I have or some of the others have, that, you know, we're not, by voting yay for this, we're not voting to increase their electrical rates, and you're telling us that we're not doing that.
That's correct. And I applaud you for that. I think that's what our intent is. What we want to do is keep rates as low as they possibly can be. That was one of the reasons from TVA's perspective, they're trying to shift the peak and use energy efficiency, which will help long-term defer, to delay investments, and then hopefully we can keep cost under control. There's a lot of upward pressure on that, but from Starkville Electric's, our part, we're staying flat, just like y'all have agreed at the last rate change, or rate adjustment on our part, so our margins are there. This is basically a pass-through. TVA has approved it, and this what will be effective April the 1st.
One last thing, my last comment, if there's any way we can avoid having to consider this, personally, I would prefer not to. Even though it says a pass-through, I just don't feel comfortable with even giving a pass-through, because I have always been under the impression that TVA can find some way, if they want a rate pass-through, they can do it. Because what if we do not vote in the affirmative? Are they going to say, well, we can't do it because the Board of Alderman didn't do it? So that's the only discomfort that I have. I just don't feel comfortable. I'll decide in a few minutes. Okay.
And let me, one other thing on this particular contract, it does change the fuel component, and I just want to mention that to you as well. There's two parts to the wholesale bill. One is a base component, the other was a fuel component. And there was an effort, I guess, in the last 2 or 3 months to better define what the fuel component looked like. So it's all fuel, and then it's all in one category. And you'll realize that's called what we've used up until now is the fuel cost adjustment, and that varies on a monthly basis. So that process will continue for the foreseeable future. So there that is as well.
Now, Mr. Kemp, you may want to touch for a second on the difference between the approval of the wholesale rates and ultimately the approval of our rates to our customers, which is something the board will approve later, and how those two processes.
Well, this is all a part of that. What they've done is they've structured the impacts, and then they've made the adjustments based under the season, and then that's reflected back through each of the individual retail rates, residential, and then all the commercial for all the customers that we have. And so that was what I was saying. So those rates are a part of this attachment, reflecting the change for our wholesale rate to go to a time of use rate instead of what we used to be an end-use rate. So they're a part of the full package itself. And TVA has looked at it and it's consistent with what they would approve. So I mean, we got their rates this week. Is that what you're asking?
Alderman Ball.
The time of use rate, that would be for residential and commercial.
Yes, sir.
And so in other words, that possibly can decrease at the time of usage, because a lot of people don't be at home, they'll be at work, so maybe that might decrease some, right?
It could, that's right. And like you'll say, in April, the rates in April and May are going to be lower, so they're going to actually see a decrease in those costs during that period of time. I think the other thing is we go forward from this over the next few years, and I use the word nearly flat. It's an attempt to try to put a system in place that sends the right signals, but at the same time, it's not much variation from what we'd consider peak and off-peak. So that's not really much delta there. But what we'd like to do is continue to work with our customers on energy efficiency, ways to save energy, save money, shift load off-peak, and at the end of the day, it might can save them some money down the road. That's something we'll be looking at over the years to come. There will be some infrastructure improvements that we would need to do from a city standpoint, on the customer, on our side, on the distribution side, to take full advantage of some of these rates as they further mature in the future. But I'm back to Mr. Perkins' comment. These are guaranteed. There should not be any more change on the wholesale side, which would reflect back through the retail side until sometime after 2012 and beyond.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. Thank you, sir.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Well, we don't have a motion yet. Alderman Vaughn.
I'd like to make a motion to request the consideration of the rate change agreement between the city of Starkville and the wholesale provider TVA.
Alderman Vaughn has made a motion to approve of the rate change agreement between the city of Starkville and wholesale provider TVA as presented. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Thank you, Mr. Kent. And that will carry us to the consideration of the change order request from Ellis Construction for an additional 78 days on the Pat Station Road project.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna move approval on that matter. I removed it from consent. I'm gonna move approval on it.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to approve of the change order request from Ellis Construction for an additional 78 days on the Pat Station Road connection process. Alderman Perkins, that's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Perkins, you wish to speak on the matter?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Alderman Sistrunk.
Just one question. Does this change our cost, the city's cost on this project in any way?
No change in contract price, just contract number.
Neither administrative nor actual construction costs?
Well, you want to address the administrative?
There will be some extra time expended by our firm and having to do inspection services and administration services for another 78 days. That will yet to be determined as to how that will be handled.
But we're not approving that by changing this. Thank you.
But the change order as it's presented is strictly an extension of time.
All right, thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the revised job description and the advertisement for the Board of Lab Technician in the wastewater division of the Public Services Department. Mr. Boyd?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Our lab tech in the wastewater department retired, with last Friday being his last day. We need to fill this position. What's presented to you is not a change in the classification. It's not a change in title. It's simply trying to establish a good job description. As you may know, our old job descriptions go back to, I'm not sure when, I think probably somewhere back in the 70s. The existing job description for this position was about 2 sentences. And all we're trying to do is just to establish a good, effective job description for enumerating the duties of this position.
Mr. Mayor, may I recognize?
You may.
Mr. Personnel Officer, I wanted to be informed of, the reason I put this, I want to be informed of the difference between the two job descriptions, and also want to see, does this revised job description provides for more pay than what the retired person received?
Absolutely not. It's the same classification, same rate of pay.
Okay.
The old job description, as I say, was just a very short, about 2 sentences that really did nothing to detail the functions of the job and the job expectations.
So this job description does not include no additional requirement that may exclude someone out? I mean,
No.
okay, I just want to make sure, I want to talk straight with you.
Right. It does require a level 3 certification, which our present, our just retired person did have, was part of the job at that point in time. So there's nothing that is any change in job expectation. It's trying to fully enumerate and state the expectations in the job.
And the job duties are the same as the retiring person is doing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? We don't have a motion. Discussion.
I got one question.
Alderman Vaughn.
What was the past job description was? What was it?
I'm
The
sorry?
past job description, what was it instead of laboratory technician, water delivery? What was the description of it? What was the job title? What was the job
I
title?
apologize. The title was lab technician. There's no change in title. There's no change in classification, salary grade, rate of pay. As I say, the old job description was extremely outdated, was a very short, about 2-sentence statement. I apologize, I should have put that in, but as we've had position vacancies, I've tried to, in many cases, update our job descriptions to be more descriptive of the position and the expectations.
Further discussion? Alderman Sistrunk.
I move approval of the revised job description and the advertisement for the job of lab technician in the wastewater division of the Public Services Department.
Alderman Sistrunk has made a motion to approve of the job description and the advertisement for the job of lab technician in the wastewater division of the Public Services Department as presented. Alderman Sistrunk, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Corey. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Sistrunk's motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval of the job description to advertise to fill the position of GIS coordinator. Mr. Boyd?
We brought this to the board, I think 2 meetings ago. At that time, it was reviewed, and there was discussions of the GIS position and wanting to make sure that it did reflect that this position adequately handled all of the GIS job duties for the entire city, not just one department. At that time, it was asked that the tech committee review this. We have made revisions to try to clarify those points to make sure that this reflects the entire GIS duties for the entire city. This position, the GIS duties, were formerly performed by an employee who has left our service. That person was on a part-time, 30-hour per week position with full benefits. This is requesting to expand this to a full-time, 40-hour per week job. There's no change in budgeting. It's not asking for additional funds. It is moving some funds from one position to into this position within the Public Services Department that Mr. Devlin feels are necessary. But this position will provide GIS services and also will provide, as time is available, some additional support service for particular projects in public services.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Perkins.
the salary range from 35,000 to 47,000?
Yes, sir.
It's more than what we hired some department heads years ago. What is the language that was included by the technology committee?
If you look at item 3, coordinating the city's GIS mapping and information system, including administration and maintenance of GIS databases, coordinating that through the IT department. Number 4, take a lead role in development of information infrastructure to support data sharing, cross-departmental multi-purpose operations as related to GIS. In the general position summary, handling all aspects of the city of Starkville's GIS system, including strategic and long-range plans as they would relate to GIS, of course.
Mr. Personnel, also, just a point of information. I see this person reports to Director of Public Services.
Yes, sir.
And now having a background in this area, was any thought given to this person reporting to the department head of the IT department, given the background of this new employee and the background of that department head? And I'm not trying to put one department against the other, I'm just wondering, given the background of this.
There was discussion of that as this position has existed previously in
public services and for budgeting purposes, that's where it is established that it was decided to leave it in there. We did discuss that in the TAC committee.
But as a personnel officer, and, looking out for the city's best interest, do you think that, given this person with all this technology background and with the new department head fresh on board, it would seem that, that this may be a person that would report to that department head? And my question here is, did the technology department head give an opportunity to review this just to see about the job descriptions, and you get all his comments included? And
yes, sir.
And
he was a part of this, and as I say, that was thoroughly discussed, and for purposes of budget and reporting relationship, it was decided to leave it reporting to public services, but with close coordination with IT.
Well, that's very good, and I understand you're telling me that you're going to report to public service mainly because of the money, but but we need to make sure, and no disrespect to the public service director, I'm sure he's going to do his best, but we need to make sure that this person works closely also with that technology department here, because it is my opinion that person has the skill, the training, knowledge, expertise to provide a very good level of supervision. So hopefully we'll keep that technology department head in the loop as to matters relating to the job description of this particular employee.
And that's why we specifically included in number 3 that these functions be closely coordinated through the IT department.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That's all
Yes,
my
sir.
question.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further discussion. Alderman Carver.
Oh, I don't know that much about GIS, and from an emergency management standpoint, how does that used, as far as addressing and things like that? Is it tied in with the fire department and the police department?
I think in the 911 system.
So, it would not only just with you, but can every department utilize GIS? More or less?
The way that people are doing, accessing information now, for matters of information.
I'll probably just
Cities and things like that.
I'll probably just talk with you later about that. Okay.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? No motion pending. Alderman Corey.
I would move approval then of the job description and advertise to fill the position of GIS coordinator as provided.
Alderman Corey has made a motion to approve of the job description and advertisement to fill the position of GIS coordinator as provided. Alderman Corey, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Sistrunk. Alderman Corey, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. And that will exhaust the non-executive session portion of the agenda. We do have one potential matter for executive session tonight, a motion to move into a closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session would be in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Sistrunk to move into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Parker. Alderman Sistrunk, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. We will take a moment to reconfigure the room.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.